welcome to the Death of a Dream podcast with your host, Hanna Nuss. That's me. Let's go ahead and ground ourselves in our greatness. And yes, I have something great that goes beyond just COVID recovery. I figured all of you would be here for that. So my great thing yesterday was really, the downsizing and the minimizing of our house as a whole was done intentionally. I was thinking about the timeline today, and really it probably happened around this time, maybe a little bit later. But the biggest reason that we started to downsize was just this inability to ever get ahead of the management of our things. And for me, it was just this constant backlash of we get ahead and then we'll be going good, right? We can get into a good rhythm. We can stay there. We can go for about 4 weeks. And I feel like it's the same way with dieting or eating healthy. Anytime that something goes awry, you completely spin off the tracks. And for me, this was a huge one with dieting or with restrictive eating, because that's really what it was for me. Is like I'd be going fine. We'd be going good, and then someone would get sick, and then we completely derail, and my entire house is messy, and we're just filled to the ceiling with things that are dirty, whether it was clothes or dishes or just junk, right? And all of a sudden we get off, and so then I would constantly be trying to get us back to just a normal state where we could get back into a rhythm. But that left us in this place where we were constantly recovering. We were constantly in recovery mode. We were constantly trying to find our way back to baseline. And it never seemed like we could get ahead of it. Never seemed like we could stay ahead of it for very long. I would say the longest streak that we had was probably like 6 weeks. And around that 6-week mark, someone gets sick, some schedule would change, right? We'd have like state volleyball where we'd be gone for 3 days straight, or we'd have, just fill in the blank, right? And how often does this happen? Or we'd have holidays, and so then it was just like, oh, let the cars get messy. Oh, let the house get messy. And we would just be piling at that point. And then I'd just be like, okay, let's just get through this week, right? And I'd try to fast forward, like, let's get through this week, and then we can get back to our baseline. We can start eating well again. Like, let's just go crazy and let everything spin out of control. The problem was, in spin out of control mode, we were constantly piling. And so as a result of the piling, I'd get so far behind that the second that I wanted to kind of hit the ground running to get back into a new schedule or the right schedule or the healthy schedule or whatever we were going to call it, the second that we'd get back there, I would be exhausted. Too exhausted to do whatever it was I was planned on doing, right? And so this was pretty much how I lived my life. And so when we moved into more of this minimalist approach to our life, to the simplicity of our things, to the simplicity of how we live, all of a sudden we stopped piling. There was not much to pile, right? And this is hugely important because for me, it didn't allow us to get in this place where our stuff was controlling us again. And that is a huge power shift. When you stop allowing things to control your life, to run your life, to be the reason that you have to work, to be the reason that you have to do X, Y, and Z, and you start deciding why you're doing things, right, for you. And that took us to this week. So last week we had state volleyball, so that kind of set our schedule all out of control, right? Every night we were gone, not home until late. And then, and that was just one day, right? And then we move into Hanna coming down with COVID, which means Hanna can't clean, which means it's up to my husband, which he did a great job. But this is what I can say. Had we had the inventory for us to pile up things, right? For us to make a bigger mess, we would have used that. Which means Hanna, after she was flat on her back for at least 7 days, if not more, we are finally coming back. When I did get to come back from that, it took me yesterday afternoon, I would say that I started at about 3, cleaning up the mess from 2 weeks of being off, right? And it only took me probably from 3 until 6 to get a handle, to get a rehandle on what our life looks like, to reorganize, to reset. And that's a big deal, right? Because in past lives, in non-minimalist lives, I would have had at least 2 days of cups to clean, no question. And all of them would have had milk in the bottom. I live with Neanderthals. I am telling you, they are all cavemen. I cannot even help it. Okay? They all would have had milk at the bottom. I would have had probably, I would guess 10 bowls with milk at the bottom, with cereal. I am telling you, there is one thing that I hate cleaning the most. It is a sticky, leftover cereal bowl. If I shall go down on this earth as anything, it will be someone who despises stuck on cereal. Okay? I don't even like buying cereal for that reason. I know, all you have to do is wash out the bowl right after you're done with it. It just never really happens that way for me. And so I just try to avoid it at all costs. Anyways, I would have had this magnitude of mess. The playroom would have just been a never-ending headache. The kitchen, all of our clothing, just this monumentous mess. And instead, what I ended up having was this space that really wasn't all that behind, right? Yesterday, we even managed to clean up and put away all of our outdoor furniture and outdoor toys, put them all away, get ready for winter, which shall be upon us soon. And that felt amazing because really past life, it would have taken me at least 3 weekends to kind of fully recover. It would have probably taken me about a weekend to manage the kitchen madness. It probably would have taken me another weekend to get effectively caught up on laundry. And then it would have taken me probably one more weekend to get the girls' playroom cleaned up and fixed and all put back together. And it took me about 3 hours yesterday. Right? That's huge. And that's just a testament to our willingness to really shift our lives so we did not live a life controlled by our things. So our weekends, our free time, our nights aren't spent managing objects. That's it. That's really it. And that felt amazing. It felt amazing to be able to recover so quickly from an entire week. Almost 2 weeks, I would say. Unknowingly, I had been sort of exhausted, and I don't know if that meant that I had COVID earlier than when I started to have obvious symptoms. It's really hard to know. But I would say I probably took about 2 weeks off of the management of my home. My husband did a great job managing. He was in a better place to be able to manage because of the inability. This is it. The inability to spin out of control in the ways that we used to be able to, right? Where we used to be able to just pile bowls and cups and forks and spoons and all the things all the way to the ceiling before we had to take control. Now we don't have that ability. If it's not clean, you're not eating cereal, right? Anyways, that's my great thing. It felt incredible. I can't say enough about how important minimalism is for you to be able to effectively manage your life. It also clears energy. It clears energy. Having control of your things, of your management, cleanliness, it just helps everything. So that's it. Go ahead and take time for yourself to recognize yourself for your greatness. Greatness, grounding, imperative. Okay, so today we are about to get real weird. And I didn't know, I've been venturing down this path of hippy-dippy, feel-good energy type stuff. And I've really been diving deeper into that work. I'm really excited to start working with some people who can help me expand my mindset in the way that I'm approaching my own energy. It's so important to me. And so this is where we're going to get weird, right? Because I'm going to start bringing in some of that stuff as I'm discovering and researching a little bit more. And today's episode really is going to get weird because we're going to start talking about this idea of manifestation. And it sort of lives out in the world of that's not really weird. And this is what I'll say. You can't really get a result, right? And I've started to work with teams on this as well. You can't get a result if you're not sure of what that result is, right? And it causes extreme discomfort at some points if people are expecting different results in different instances, right? And so when you say, I just want to be good, I want to be good at X. Well, good is extremely subjective, right? What does good mean? What is good to you? What does that look like, right? And if your interpretation of good is something different from Carol's or your husband's or your spouse's or your significant others, right? If your interpretation of that is different, imagine what happens when you feel like you've arrived, you've done the thing, you've experienced greatness, you've done good, but everybody else thinks that that's not enough. Everybody else, right? We left it open to interpretation. And so when it comes to manifestation, what's important is that you're officially establishing what it is that you want. And we've talked about this before. I know one of our more recent episodes that was with Anna Rose, she talks about the importance of putting down what you want, right? And how important that is. And this really lines up with the laws of manifestation, right? Because when we are saying what we want, the world allows us to receive that. But when we're leaving it up to guess, or we're not being specific with it, right? There's a reason that there are specific goals. There's a reason that you're supposed to get specific with it. When we're not specific about it, we don't really manifest anything, right? We can't really go all the way there because we're not telling the world what to give us. I know. It seems like higher levels of insanity. That's what I said. It's going to get weird. I told you. I warned you. Okay? Please just stick with me. This is a real thing. So I always start the year off, and last year around January, I talked about how I would set up my own goals. I turned it on. Okay. And so I talked about how we might set that up. And this is why this is important. When we're not putting that energy into the world, when we're not asking the world for the things that we want, when we're just kind of moving through, right? When we're just letting other people decide what's meant for us, what we might want in this world, all of a sudden people do start deciding that. Now that's fine if you want your life to be ran by other people, if you want your life to really be decided on by someone else. However, if you are like me, bless you, you may want control over your life. You may want specific things. You may not know what those specific things are yet, right? But there may be specific things that you know aren't meant for you. And so now it's important that you start getting specific with what it is that you're asking the world for, right? Don't just like generally, I want a job. I posted something yesterday to my story that was like, please stop just praying for a job, right? Pray for more. Pray for a job that doesn't suck the life out of you. Pray for a job that doesn't lead to depression. Pray for a job that nurtures you, that is a great environment for you. Pray for a job that's everything that you want, right? And be specific, because the second that we are, the world starts to move for us. I'm telling you, the only time that I was very specific with what I wanted for my life was when I started looking for the person that I was going to marry. I had dated a couple of real nice people or real terrible people. And I remember just being like, is this the life that you want? Do you really want like people that you're going to have to manage and take care of for the rest of your life? Like, is that what you want? Someone who isn't excited, someone who is going to drive you nuts? No. So for the first time ever in my life, I had said, okay, I'm not settling until I find this person. This is what they would look like. This is what they would sound like. These are the things that they would be excited by. This is the kind of person that I'm looking for. Very specific, very laid out. And the second that I put that out into the world, I was surprised how quickly the world responded, right? And perfectly handed me this person who checked every single list. I even got specific. I know Anna Rose had said in a relationship guidance interview, she had said not to be specific about the physical traits. I'm telling you, if you can get specific, get specific. Go for it. Lay it all out there, right? And so that was the first time that I had done that. And then I did it with what my goals were as well. I had laid those things out perfectly. I had said what they were going to be. The problem was that they weren't big enough for me, which we've discussed in past episodes. But I had also said that with what my dreams were, right? This is what it's going to be. And it happened so quickly. And the reason why is because I was actually saying what those things were going to be. Now I'm not as laid back as I used to be about making a point to revisit those things, to keep calling them into fruition. I do that work every day in my journal. But prior to that, still just saying what it was that I wanted set an inertia towards me getting those things. And all of those things happened so quickly. And it's just about the manifestation. I am not kidding you. I am always amazed by how the world responds to my directness with it, right? Because you think like, oh, it's just the world and it's big and it doesn't have time for you, and it's not really made for just the one little you, right? But then think about this. That's all that the world is made up of, right? The entire world is just made up of just little insignificant people. That's it. There's nobody who's like born more significant. I mean, I will say royals, definitely. But other than them, everybody else is kind of just born insignificant. And it still blows my mind. Like, I'm just sitting here and I'm thinking about my kids and how I raise and prepare them for the world, and how do I make sure that they follow their hearts and that they don't get lost or mixed up in the wrongness or the rightness of the world. Like, how do I guide them? How do I make sure that they follow the things in their heart, right? Well, my first step is that I'm leading by example, right? That I'm not miserable or constantly chasing something or, wishing and talking in ways that other people's dreams are a reality, but mine aren't, right? My dreams are absolutely right here, right out in front of everyone, being lived out, played out, talked about, for goodness sakes, right here. And my kids know that. But I think when I think about that, the bigness of the world can make it seem like you, however big or small you are or you think you are, really the vast majority of us are likely very insignificant. And I'll tell you a good way to test this. Quit everything that you're doing. Everything. And then don't really talk to people, just kind of disappear. And then you'll go ahead and reset and remember how seemingly insignificant you are. And that will be a huge blow to your ego. But on the flip side of that, after you've recovered from the terrible downfall that comes along with that, once you're through the growing pains of that, you'll begin to realize that the world really is your oyster. I've never had an oyster. That's probably a terrible saying, but you'll begin to realize how effective the world is at giving you the things that you need, at guiding you to the places you never thought you'd be guided, right? And I started my dreams, kind of my dream space and goals, as kind of a test. Oh, really? Can you actually do this? And it's still a test. But what I can tell you today is that consistency and knowing what you're going after will lead you where you want to go. Period. And I don't care how crazy it is. I really don't. Because it's just about setting what that is and saying it, and not freaking backing down. Don't back away from it, right? When I started, I was like, I want to do a podcast, but I don't just want to do a podcast. Like, I want to have a successful podcast. That is just one that my grandma listens to, right? And I wish that she did, because I bet she would listen all the time. I don't know if that would be a good or bad thing, but I want to have a successful podcast. And so I had to write things that in that moment, writing them seemed disgusting, made me nauseous, made my husband nauseous, made me think that I was completely off of every rocker that I had ever been on in my life, right? But those are the things that are worth going after, because I can tell you, as someone who wrote small things down, then reached them, it becomes this like dangerous cycle of never having enough, of never setting your sights high enough. And why wouldn't you set them as high as you can reach, right? Because even if you fall, and you're going to, I promise you, that's like the one thing I can promise you, at least if you are reaching for the actual heights that you're capable of, and if you've never tested it, I'm just telling you, go ahead and use your sickness factor as a good guiding post. If it makes you sick to your stomach, the thought of going after it, it's probably pretty close to being right. If it doesn't scare you at all, if it seems perfectly reasonable, keep going. There's something bigger in you. There's something deeper in you that if you go with just the status quo, just the thing that you feel comfortable with, you are going to get there, and you're going to feel disappointed and wishing that you had reached for more. So start putting it out there. And it doesn't have to be like, oh, I'm going to do this Facebook post or do a very public podcast that everyone can find on my dreams, on me chasing my dreams. You don't have to go that route. I wouldn't recommend it for everyone. I definitely wouldn't recommend it for most people. It's not an easy route to go. However, if that's what's in your heart, go buck wild. You know what it is for you. You know you do. I know that you do. Do not even sit there and go, Hannah, I don't. No, you do. Probably the more that you're telling me that you don't, the more that you're trying to avoid the fact, probably means you know more than most people. So I want you to start putting it out there. Put it out there. Write it down. Say it out loud. Even if you can't bring yourself to write it, because I'm telling you, there is something that is paralyzing that comes with the written word on a piece of paper, even if it is a private piece of paper. It's scary, right? And it's scary because you know that it's true. You know. And so start protecting your mindset and the way and the things that you're calling into your life. And we'll do more on that tomorrow, I promise. But really start figuring out what it is that you want. Start calling those things into existence. Because even as weird as we just got, and it didn't even get all that weird, I'm telling you, it's a real thing. Manifestation is a real thing. The world does not know how to respond to you if you are not asking it for anything. And it can sound like praying. It can sound like writing things down in a notebook. It can sound like you just constantly knowing what it is that you're working towards. Period. And that specificity is what will guide you to where you want to go. Not only in the world reacting to you appropriately, but also in you knowing what the frick it is that you're trying to do. As always, you're smart, you're strong, you're beautiful. What are you going to do? Change the world.